Hi skiers, I'm Jeff from skiessentials.com. Welcome to episode 20 of our Top 5 Fridays weekly ski industry news videos. It's kind of hard for me to believe that we've done 20 of these already, but I suppose the numbers don't lie. So thank you to everyone who has tuned in to watch these. It's been fun so far, and I'm hoping we can keep it going. And as I've kind of alluded to in the past, hopefully we can bring in some other people once we're allowed to be less socially distanced, so to speak. Along those same lines, I've talked about bringing people in to these videos, to these top 5 videos. Last week, I also talked about our new Chairlift Chat speaker series and mentioned that we were going to release an interview with Mike Hattrip this week. Unfortunately, Mike Hattrip had bit of an accident on his mountain bike and has been unable to do that interview thus far. He's okay. He's had some issues. I won't get into details, but he got hurt pretty bad, but nothing life-threatening. So send Mike some healing vibes. He's a great guy. I've been texting with him over the past week or two, make sure he's okay. And staying positive and stuff like that. So we will start that series with Mike Hattrip. It may be next week, it may be the following week, but keep an eye out for that, and my apologies that it didn't happen sooner. And with that, I think we can get straight to the news. We are running a Labor Day sale this weekend, so it's pretty much 10% site-wide, excluding 2021 skis, 2021 gear in general due to manufacturer restrictions, stuff like that. So check it out. We got really good prices on some stuff already, some past year stuff, so another 10% is pretty darn good in a lot of situations. And yeah, with that, we'll finally get to the news. Pretty light week for news this week, so I think we'll get through it pretty quickly, and then you guys can go enjoy your holiday long weekend. First up, this is an article from the Aspen Times, and actually some quotes from Fritz Sperry, who's a Summit County, Colorado mountaineer and also a guidebook author. And it's kind of surrounding what this season is going to bring in terms of backcountry use and the surrounding complications of an increased amount of people in the backcountry. So it kind of cites some positives and negatives. On the positive side, we're definitely seeing an increase in demand for touring equipment. AT bindings, boots, skins, all that kind of stuff, poles, avalanche beacons, what have you. There's a whole bunch of gear that you need to get if you're just starting out as a backcountry skier, and there's a lot of people right now just starting out as backcountry skiers. Basically, when COVID-19 restrictions were put in place last March, pretty much right away we saw a big, not just us, but industry-wide, we saw a big increase in demand for touring equipment. It was almost impossible to find skins at one point last spring. So it's certainly already happening. And as a positive, that increased demand hopefully will help kind of financially help some businesses that may be struggling in the ski industry right now. We're not in an ideal position for the ski industry right now, as we've talked about throughout these videos. I think things are a lot better than most people thought they would be back in March or April. But yeah, there's certainly some businesses, probably mostly probably local retailers, your local brick and mortar retailer. Those are the businesses that tend to be hurting a little bit right now. And hopefully with the increased demand in touring equipment, they'll be able to move some of that stuff and really kind of help recoup what may be some lost sales for them. Now, on the other hand, the concern is safety. We've talked about this a lot. Increased use or increased participation in the backcountry is going to create a more dynamic environment with unfortunately more variables, more things that could go wrong. Specifically, this article kind of talks about all these people with new gear that are new to the backcountry potentially going out too early. It happens every year, even with people that have been backcountry skiers for a lifetime. It's really easy to get excited. It happens here in Vermont. As soon as we get the first substantial powder day, there are a ton of people out there touring regardless of what's underneath that snow. And it can be very, very dangerous. So a lot of organizations are kind of echoing this same sentiment. Both avalanche centers in Colorado and Utah pretty much said the same thing. So just be aware and be cautious and be patient. Don't go out too early. Pay attention to what's underneath the snow surface, how much it snowed, and of course pay attention to potential avalanche dangers. But there's a lot more than just avalanches that can go wrong when you're out in the backcountry. So something to keep in mind if you're new to backcountry or if you're a seasoned veteran in the backcountry. Just a reminder to stay patient. I've had some friends have pretty bad injuries before the lifts even start spinning because they're just out there a little too early, getting after it a little bit too much. So something to keep in mind. Next up, this is probably my favorite topic of the week. Mount Buehler or Buehler, I'm sure I'm pronouncing that wrong, but over in Australia, they have pretty much the best refund policy that I have ever heard of. And as a little bit of history, they opened for the Australian ski season, and unfortunately, after 44 days, they were forced to close due to increased restrictions. So going back to stage 3 restrictions. And now, clearly, that's not a full season. And what they're doing is they're letting their pass holders decide how much of a refund they think they should get, anywhere from no refund at all to a 100% refund of their pass. Doesn't matter whether you skied at all. It doesn't matter whether you skied all 44 of those days or none. You can decide how much money you think you should get back. I think that's really cool. I think it puts a lot of faith in humanity in general, and I think it's going to work out really well for them. And there's a quote of kind of how they made that decision, what they were thinking, what they were citing, their thought process when they made that decision, and ultimately it was the trusted relationship we hold with our members. These are passionate individuals and families who share our commitment to this mountain. I think that's awesome. Mountain communities are special. You know that. We know that. I think this is a really, really cool way to say, hey, you guys take whatever back you think is fair. And yeah, I mean, I'm sure we'll hear if this puts them into financial ruin and bankruptcy, but I don't expect that to happen at all. I think skiers in general are pretty reasonable people, and I think people won't abuse this situation. Number 3 and actually number 4 are both kind of short-ish topics that both fall under the same theme, in my opinion. They're both stories of how ski resorts are connected to their communities, and I suppose that's, 2, 3, and 4 could all be under the same umbrella, but how ski resorts are connected to their communities and not always necessarily in a positive way. So last week or a couple weeks ago, maybe, we talked about Peak and Burke, who were both looking to significantly decrease their valuation to help basically the sale process. And both of those requests have been 100% denied. So both towns just said no. And they didn't just say no, they basically doubled down and said no, the original values are what you're worth. And they were citing basically their failure, or what they viewed to be the failure to include all of the assets of the mountain. I think they said that they had just included assets that resulted in direct profits or immediate profits rather than everything. And then, from the seller's perspective, they're kind of thinking like, we should be valued what somebody is willing to pay for us. So this is certainly not over. I'm sure we're going to hear more about this. But yeah, no immediate help for the sale of those two properties. If you go back through all of our top fives, and you can read a lot about Jay and Burke and the situation of fraud, investment fraud. So no action there, no movement there, other than the fact that they just said no. And when we talked about this initially, we talked about the fact that, like in Jay's situation, if they had said, sure, we'll let you revalue your company to that, it would have resulted in like $1 million loss in tax revenue for the town. So I'm sure that's where a lot of this is coming from. And yeah, we'll continue to keep a watchful eye on this and see what happens. Not just because both mountains are like within an hour and 15 minutes from here, but I think it's pretty interesting on a national or even international ski industry level as well. Next up is like I said, similar story of connection between a resort and the community, and this is a story put out by Colorado Sun about Granby Ranch. To simply put, what was once a pretty promising ski community is now pretty messy and a pretty chaotic financial situation. So back in 2005, when this was formed, when Granby Ranch was being developed, they developed it with a 49-year lease purchase agreement with the existing homeowners, in which these homeowners would eventually actually take ownership of the resort's golf and ski assets. Now, in doing so, the homeowners had to provide a $10,000 fee, which essentially resulted in about $8 million raised. Now, in a recent foreclosure sale, the new owners, and I can't remember I should have written down, but the new holding organization that purchased it has just terminated that agreement. I definitely would encourage you to go to Colorado Sun and read more details if you're interested in this stuff, because I am no lawyer, but they have terminated that agreement, and it doesn't seem like the homeowners have much legal bargaining power on their end to go fight it, which would mean that these homeowners are out about a collective $8 million. And basically the reason for doing this is because it made it hard to sell the mountain. And the new owners of the mountain purchased it solely with the desire and the plan to sell it again. So kind of a bummer, but I think this is just another interesting story of how a ski resort and its community are so closely tied. I think Stowe is a really good example of how a ski resort and the community are so closely tied. And here's another one, and kind of the ways in which that could potentially go wrong. So yeah, if you're interested in this, head on over to Colorado Sun, read more about it, and as we always do, we'll keep an eye on it. That's it for news topics. Next up, we have our edits of the week. So first up is the trailer for a film called Bermuda from a company called Strictly Films. I really like the look of this movie. Pretty darn professional, really high quality cinematography. Not like a ton of big name skiers in there, but certainly some names that you would recognize. McCrae Williams is in there. Friend of mine, Ethan Swadberg, is in there too. If you're unfamiliar with Ethan Swadberg, you should definitely check out his skiing. In my opinion, he's kind of like, I'm going to give him a lot of credit here, but he's almost like the next Candide. At least I think he has a pretty similar skiing style and way of looking at the mountain. So I really enjoy watching him ski. Next up, Bobby Brown shared his best GoPro follow cam shots from the previous 4 years. Bobby Brown's brother, I believe his name is Peter. God, I'm going to be really disappointed if I get that wrong. But he is the guy that films him most of the time. It's a really, really cool brother-brother relationship that they have. He's a really good skier himself, but when you see a follow cam shot of Bobby Brown, especially if it's like a really big jump follow cam shot, chances are it's his brother that shot it. So check that out if you haven't seen follow cam footage of Bobby Brown before. It's really, really good. And then we have a 2020 season edit from Hunter Carey, and I will go out right now and say, I am sorry, Hunter, but I had never heard of you before. Maybe I have. I probably have coached an event where he has competed before, judging by his age. I didn't know your name, and you can do double cork 1260s both ways in the half pipe. And I can't think of a better example of how far park skiing has come in the last 5 years, decade at most. It is unbelievable to me that there are people that I have never heard of that can do double cork 1260s both ways in the half pipe. I think it's unbelievable. It's really, really cool. There's a promising future for the sport, and it's exciting to see. So if you want to watch a young skier absolutely throwing down, check out Hunter Carey's season edit. And that's it for Top 5 Fridays this week. Enjoy your hopefully long weekend. We will be taking a break from Top 5 Fridays next week. Unfortunately, I will be out of town for a funeral, which is not something that is very exciting. I would much rather be here chatting with you guys, but it is what it is. So we will take a break next week. We'll be back the following week, and hopefully next week we'll work in that Mike Hattrip interview if he is well enough. So as another reminder, send Mike Hattrip some healing vibes. I'm sure he could use them. And we will talk to you guys soon. Thank you for tuning in again.